Well, welcome. This is Tim and Michelle Eby. We are missionaries serving in South Africa, and we just want to say hi to our links districts and to tell you a little bit about ourselves and to share with you what God is doing here in Africa. Let me start with myself. My name is Tim Eby, and my parents were missionaries in Papua New Guinea. That's where I was born and grew up. And my parents, Lee and Carol Ann Eby, served as missionaries with the Church of the Nazarene for 20 years in Papua New Guinea. I was born there, lived there up until about age 15, and I got a lot of my love for aviation through that because we would fly in the mountains of Papua New Guinea. And I gave my life to the Lord when I was 9 years old. And I thought to serve the Lord and to fly airplanes would be the best job in the world. So I pursued a flying career to become a missionary pilot. And by God's grace, we moved back to the U.S. and I started we moved to Nashville, Tennessee. And my mom served with Trevecca Nazarene University as an English professor, and that's where I got to meet Michelle. We were there at Trevecca. And Michelle, share a little bit about where your family came from.
Yeah, hi, my name is Michelle, and I was raised in Beirut, Lebanon, and Amman, Jordan. My parents were also Nazarene missionaries. They served for 9 years in the Middle East as teachers. And when the Civil War broke out, we had to leave the Middle East and we came back to Nashville, Tennessee, where my dad became a professor at Trevecca Nazarene University. And we were attending Trevecca Community Church, which was then called College Hill Church of the Nazarene, and that's where Tim and I met. And after we began dating and then married, we have 4 children and 5 grandchildren. We have 2 sons and 2 daughters, and 3 granddaughters and 2 grandsons. So we feel very blessed. Tim,
And
you started talking about your call to missions. Why don't you continue telling a little bit about that?
so I attended Laterno University, which was how I prepared to be a pilot with the goal of becoming a missionary pilot. And I felt that call on my life since I was about 16. I remember us being back in Kentucky. That's where my mom grew up, and we were at Covington. And I went to the altar at about age 16, and my life was sanctified, set apart, and that's when I felt a call to missions. That's when I made a decision that I would pursue that. And going to Laterno was a way of preparing me to be a pilot and mechanic. Michelle and I ended up getting married in our last year of college, and we moved to Atlanta, Georgia. And we spent almost 9 years there as I was gaining more experience, learning to fly, learning to do more mechanics. I used my degree to get the experience that I needed, always with the heart of how are we going to make it to the mission field. And many of those years were years when God prepared us for exactly what we were going to encounter, even though we thought it was a delay. Surely God kept us from being on the field until we were ready. And that sometimes is a hard thing to do, is to wait upon the Lord. But He did that in our lives. He prepared us. And finally, when it was the right time, God opened the doors, and the Church of the Nazarene was starting a new aviation program in Nairobi, Kenya. And they asked us to move there with our family and to become the pilot for the East Africa. And so we moved in 1997 to Kenya. And Michelle, share a little bit about our life in Kenya. What is it that you were doing while I was flying airplanes?
Yeah, so we actually served there from 1997 until 2003 for 6 years. And when we arrived, they asked me to work in the field finance office as a field finance coordinator. And I did that off and on for the 6 years that we were there. I also worked with the NMA, which was Nazarene Mission Aviation Finance, and flight following for Tim as he flew throughout East Africa. One of our informal things that we did, it wasn't really a part of our job, but we love teenagers. And so we worked as informal youth pastors and worked with the youth and got to love our youth there, and just really had a great time together getting to know the young people of our church. We worked with Bible quizzing for youth as well, and just had a great ministry there with great youth who are now, many of them, leaders in the church today.
That was a
Then,
great time in our life, right?
right.
Um, just a blessing. And as that time came to a close, God really, we felt like we needed to go home for a period of time to help our kids and to change a little bit of our ministry. And we ended up in Moscow, Idaho. So that's how we got on the Northwest District. And we served there for 3 years. That was also a time of retooling where I got my master's degree in Christian education, and I started my pursuit of a pastoral to change from being a pilot to a pastor, and God helped me to graduate from my master's program to also be ordained in 2006. We were ready then to go back to the mission field, and I thought for sure we'd go back to Kenya, where we knew Swahili, we knew the leaders, but God had a different call on our life, and He sent us to Senegal. Tell us a little bit about Senegal, Michelle.
Yeah, before I do that, I just wanted to say that Nazarene Mission Aviation shut down. And that was one of the reasons that we needed to retool, but also Tim was feeling the Lord leading him to become a pastor as well. But yeah, we got to Senegal, and a French speaking country. We didn't speak French, didn't even know where it was on the map when we first went there. But it's the furthest western point on the continent of Africa. And God gave us 11 wonderful years there. We went there with three of our children. Our oldest son had graduated from high school and entered actually their U of I at the beginning. And we went with three of our kids, and our kids grew up the rest of their growing up years there, with each one of them graduating from Dakar Academy and coming back to the US to go to college or university. And I worked as the field finance coordinator for the Africa West Field, about 14 different countries that we served there in Westfield. And God gave us just great years of ministry there. We did a lot of things. Tim was involved in all kinds of things. Maybe he'll say a little bit about that. But yeah, we served there until 2018.
And yeah, being in West Africa gave us a heart for the Muslim communities because Senegal is a 94% Muslim country. And across West Africa, both English and French speaking, many of those countries are 60, 70, even 90% or higher in Muslim population. And so, reaching the lost, reaching others in other religions is always a challenge. But as I got involved with Jesus Film, we saw that the churches in West Africa were dedicated to planting churches in every village and in small towns, and we really saw the work of the Lord grow. In fact, over about an 8-year period, God helped the Church of the Nazarene to open almost more than 1,000 churches of the Nazarene in West Africa. It was amazing to see how God was using not only the Jesus Film, but the passionate dedication of the pastors to reach out to new communities and to do new things. And because of that, we gained experience. I was doing leadership development. It was about that time that Dr. Chambo, Philemao Chambo, called us and asked us if I would serve as the evangelism coordinator for the continent of Africa, which I started to do from where we were. We were serving, we were drilling wells for communities. I really kind of got overwhelmed with ministry, and it was a good time for us to make a change. And we felt like our ministry in Senegal was coming to a close, and that again, it was not just my ministry, but also Michelle's ministry. Dr. Chambo asked if she would come and serve as the personnel coordinator, working with our missionaries across Africa, because that was beginning to change. And so in 2018, we made the decision to move to South Africa. We call this our third chapter of our ministry and life. And Michelle, you got to begin working with the missionaries across Africa. Tell us a little bit about your ministry with that, and how is missions changing in these days, especially across Africa?
Yeah, it was a very new and different role for me serving as the regional personnel coordinator, but I had the privilege of working with all of our missionaries, both of those who are called from other places who are serving in Africa, and also those who are called from Africa to serve elsewhere. And the face of missions is changing. When Tim and I first started back in 1997, most of the missionaries were from USA Canada region, serving abroad, some from Europe as well, of course. Um, but today we have more than 50% of our missionaries who are serving from other countries. On the Africa region, we have more than 50%, well, most of our missionaries are actually non-USA Canada missionaries. We have missionaries from about 21 countries serving in about 22 countries at the moment, with it changing almost every other week. We have some new missionaries who've just come on and new missionaries who are leaving, retiring. And so, yeah, our missionary force has changed. The goal of the Church of the Nazarene with missionaries is to have missionaries from everywhere serving everywhere. And we do see that here in Africa. And after serving in that capacity for 6 years, I asked to move back into finance. The finance department was needing some help, and I felt like it was a good time for me to transition back. And so I transitioned back into the regional finance. Now I work at the regional finance office and with our field finance um, coordinators across the region.
And we need to pray for Michelle. Finances is challenges already, but imagine working in literally multiple currencies with people doing ministry in 34 up to 42 different countries of Africa. And the funds that we get from World Evangelism funds and from projects supporting across Africa, all of those pass through our regional department and then out to our fields. And so, Michelle, what are some of the activities that you are doing now with even the field treasures that is part of your ministry?
Yeah, so with my experience as having served for so long as a field treasurer, I've been able to now work and training our field treasurers and work alongside them. So we just went through a huge transition. The whole church, mission church, transitioned to a new finance system. So we've been doing a lot of training and relearning. And I get to work with our field finance coordinators to come alongside them to help train them. Our goal is to make sure that our people are fully trained so that they can do their job, which isn't just a job, it's a ministry. All of our field finance coordinators feel that this is a ministry, and that's what our passion is. And even our goals for the future is that those that are serving in a finance capacity don't just see it as a job, but see it as a way to serve the church and the greater church. And we want our people to have an attitude of gratitude and a heart of ministry. And that's really our goal for the future, is to continue helping our people do the best job as leaders in that finance ministry role.
And that is also that Africa is transitioning from being on the receiving side to also being on the giving side. And we are seeing a call to missions from Africa, seeing districts saying, let's send work and witness teams, let's send Nazarene mission teams from our district somewhere else, even in Africa, to be able to see the church grow. So last year we had a fantastic trip where a team from the U.S. came, connected with us from a team from South Africa, and together we went to Namibia to do a work and witness team. And those are the kind of transitions that we are seeing in the church today, and we just expect a lot more of that to happen. So as we're
Yeah.
thinking about the future, as we're thinking about what's happening in Africa, let me share just a little bit to encourage you that the church in Africa continues to grow. We have today more than 900,000 members of the Church of the Nazarene are in Africa. And we are in 42 countries out of the 54 countries of Africa. Some of those countries we can't talk about in ministry because they are in difficult areas, critical access areas. But in many places, we are seeing God do wonderful things, moving and growing. And I serve now as the coordinator for the evangelism as well as the Jesus Film teams. Today we have almost 360 Jesus Film teams registered this year in 34 countries. So imagine keeping track of all those teams, helping them with equipment and training. And so that's what I do a lot these days is traveling to different countries at least once a month, sometimes twice a month, to go and spend time doing training pastors and leaders, encouraging them, providing equipment for them, and being able to share the good news with others and help the church to grow through both support as well as encouragement.
Yeah. So what are some of the needs that we have that we're seeing across the Africa region right now?
Well, as we think about the growth of the church, there are places where it's very difficult to get to, and we have one of our approved projects is motorcycles for ministry. You can imagine that in some of the rural areas of Africa, it's still very difficult to get there because of lack of infrastructure and roads, etc. And so today, one guy on a motorcycle with a backpack can take the Jesus film and all the equipment that's necessary. Just one guy, usually there's two or three, but they take motorcycles and they go. And because the system is now battery based, rechargeable with solar panels, the equipment is micro and is getting even smaller and smaller every year. It allows us then to help those pastors. So one of the projects we have is Motorcycles for Ministry, making sure that we can provide for about $2,000 on average a motorcycle for a Jesus Film team that can help them get out there. There's also opportunities for churches to deliver equipment. So many of the sets of equipment that we have in the field are the old systems, or they are backpacks that need batteries replaced, or some of the places they take this equipment is so remote, so difficult that equipment does break down. And so we invite you as Links churches, as supporters of the Church of the Nazarene, if you'd like to come and deliver a set of equipment, we always have that kind of need. And one other that I'd like to mention is that in many places where the church is growing rapidly, we are seeing local churches building their own buildings and out of local materials, sometimes making their own bricks, doing the development of the church. But when it comes to the roof, it's a little more than sometimes than they can afford to put a iron roof on that's more permanent rather than a thatched roof. It might cost up to 800, 1,200 to $2,000. So we do have roofs for new church plants, which is another way of contributing. And this was so vivid in a recent trip that I took to Lubumbashi. Lubumbashi is in the country of the DRC, Democratic Republic of the Congo, in the southeast side of that big country. And there, our pastors have been working hard. They have, on one district down is 74 churches. They're in fact they're ready to divide and then to become two different districts. And just in the last year, they have planted more than 29 churches. 19 of those new church plants have already begun constructing their buildings, and they're looking for support to help complete the building and do that. So those are some of the things that I see are projects that are coming up in the future and are ways for people to not only pray but to engage in those things. What else do you think of, Michelle, as we think about um, those who are praying for us, those who are connected with us through Connect and Connect Care? What are some things that the people who are listening to this message today could do to help us in our ministry?
Yeah, I just want to take this opportunity to thank the Northwest District and to thank the Bethel Church for supporting us as your Links missionary. We really, really do appreciate all your prayers, the communication, and the personal financial gifts that you've given. It is really a blessing to us to receive those. We can't receive packages here in South Africa. Unfortunately, the postal system is not operable. It's not working well. Things don't arrive. So those financial gifts help us to get some things that we normally wouldn't be able to buy, and to just do some things, some special things from time to time. So we just really want to thank you for the way that you have connected with us and for those personal gifts. And we don't want to not say thank you. We want to make sure that you know that we really appreciate that support that you give to us, both financially and prayerfully. There are days when we miss a home, when we miss our family, and you know, saying yes was pretty easy when we had 4 little kids and we were taking our whole nuclear family across the world to serve. Now all of our children, our grandchildren, our aging parents are all in the US. So some of those days are difficult. So your prayers, your notes of encouragement, they really do mean a lot. So thank you very much.
And as we think about this coming year, there is going to be a special time. The Church of the Nazarene has allowed us to take a sabbatical, and we've been serving the church now for 27 years. When we first arrived, they called me Young Timothy, and today you can see young Timothy is no longer young, but after 27 years, we're going to take our first sabbatical. And so from June of 2025, June, July, and August, we're going to have a chance to be with our family and to do maybe some special vacation time where we'll completely disconnect from our ministry responsibilities and just be with family. Michelle, how can people pray for us in regards to that time?
Yeah, we do covet your prayers for that time. We really want to be able to disconnect. That's hard for us to do. We've been in ministry so long. It's going to be hard for us to disconnect. And the church has a great program where they come alongside us called Soul Shepherding, that they help us to disconnect. And we want to be able to really utilize that time to be able to spend time with our aging parents, to spend time with each of our children, with our grandchildren, and just to have a time of refreshing and renewal. So we do ask that you would pray for us during that time, that 3 month period from June through August. And then we start our home assignment following that. But we would also ask that you would just pray for us. As I mentioned, we have 3 of our parents still living, and they're aging, and we want to spend time with them. So pray for us as we connect with our parents. And being parents of adult children has its own challenges, and our children are all in the US, but not any of them in the same state. They go from all the way from Seattle, Washington, over down to Mississippi. So, and so they're everywhere. And so we just ask that you would pray for us as we connect with our kids and grandkids, that we have good times together as a family, refreshing times, renewal times together with them. And we just appreciate your prayers so much for that time while we're in the U.S.
And that means we're going to be in the US almost 6 months. One of the prayer requests we have is we need to buy a vehicle when we get back because we're going to be traveling, going to see our family, and also to begin our deputation tour, which will begin in the first week of September 2025. And we actually have scheduled a district tour in the Northwest starting on September 24th and going through October 4th on our Northwest District. We hope to follow that up with time in WAPAC. We hope to be in the South, Georgia, and other districts. We're going to be in Michigan. So as we travel across the U.S., we hope, especially for our Links churches, we would love to connect with you. And that week in September, late September, early October, if you would want to invite us, we would love to be there. We know that the church today in the U.S. doesn't have as many services during the week, but that's okay. We don't necessarily have to have a service, but we would love to connect with you. If you have, we'll go out to a restaurant, invite friends over for a barbecue. Let us hang out with you, get to know you better, and hopefully you get to know us better, and to share what God is doing, not only in our lives, but in the lives of the ministry across Africa. So we really covet your prayers for that time, hoping that everything goes smoothly for us as we transition, purchase a vehicle, begin to travel across the U.S. So, Michelle, as we close, what about a prayer request? What would you say that would be one of the prayer requests that we would ask them, our friends, to pray for us?
Yeah, so we've mentioned, our aging parents, our children, our sabbatical, but between now and then, we have a lot of travels. Tim travels a lot doing training. We both actually leave next week for 2 weeks in different directions for training that we're doing. And so just pray for us. Pray for wisdom and discernment as we train, and also for safety as we travel. Some of the travel is long. My travels this next week are going to be about 24 hours of travel to get to the destination. And Tim is heading in two opposite directions. So he's also going to be traveling a lot. And that can be exhausting. So just pray for our energy, for our health, and just that God would give us good times together with those we're ministering to and we're training with. And I think that's our biggest prayer request. Do you have anything else to add, Tim?
Yeah, I think my opportunity this month is to be in Uganda, and the teams that are coming in for training are out of South Sudan. And if you've kept up with news around the world, you realize that Sudan and South Sudan are still in conflict in a lot of places where we travel. Recently, I was in Ethiopia doing training. I will soon be in, before even Christmas time, I will be in Togo with the teams from countries like Benin and Niger. In all of these countries, there are places where the church is growing, and yet there is still the reality of some of unrest, political problems, as well as outright persecution of Christians. And so I think that's our other prayer. May God strengthen those who are living in those difficult places. And not only will God help them in those situations, but that the lostness and the brokenness of the world continue to see the light of Christ bring hope and love and faith into their communities. We want to share that part. And we just want to say, you are part of our team. You are in praying for us and praying for the ministry across Africa. You are part of our team. And we want to say to today, thank you so much for being interested in what's happening around, and just thanking the Lord for not only you as our team, but also the many pastors and dedicated leaders across Africa. Continue to pray for us and pray for them, and know that God is going to help us to build his church across Africa. Thank you. May God bless you, and we hope to see you soon. And we thank you for loving our family, and to continue to connect with us.
Yeah, thanks again. We really do love you guys and appreciate you.
Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. Bye bye.